The Department of Fish and Game is charged with managing moose and other game in Alaska. But what that really means is managing people and how they use that resource. Until very recently, in areas where there were moose, people considered it their natural right to take one. And it was Fish and Game's job to accommodate as many people as possible.
These are selections
while
from
still
the
maintaining
statewide
the herd.
student art exhibit, currently at the
Now,
art
with
department.
moose herds
on the
dwindling,
University of Alaska
subsistence
Fairbanks.
and sports hunters are mad at how the moose have been managed.
There's been a lot of mismanagement of the animals in the state of Alaska, I think, but I don't think it's due to the biologist individually. I think we've got many biologists that are damn fine individuals and very, very dedicated people. But the administration in Juneau, and I've got to say right from the top down, they won't allow the people to be biologists anymore. All the biologist is now, the majority of them are paper shufflers. And they can't run a biological balance just by shuffling papers.
The moose came to Alaska about 175,000 years ago and settled mostly in the interior. Although the record is sketchy, it appears that moose have only recently migrated to some areas of the state, like the Kenai, Alaska, and Seward peninsulas. Habitat is critical to moose survival. Man's use of the land eats up moose range, like in the Anchorage Bowl, which used to be a preferred wintering area. But it appears that man can also sometimes help the moose. New studies have shown that fires can be beneficial to moose populations, clearing areas that revegetate into good moose browse. Today there are abundant moose in areas where they've never been seen before, but in traditionally good moose range, like the interior, they're almost wiped out. We asked Bob Rausch, director of the Division of Game, why.
It's very easy to generalize, but I don't think one should. I think in some cases, perhaps too many were shot. In other cases, range changes. We haven't had fires in some of those areas for many years, and of course fires are generally beneficial to moose. Some areas we have some predation problems.
All one has to do is look at the results of current approaches in Alaska. Moose populations, caribou herds are declining. There's all sorts of wolf control going on. Hunters are dissatisfied, preservationists are dissatisfied, natives are dissatisfied. Clearly, just the fact, you don't have to know the details of what has been done. It should be clear that it hasn't worked.
Dr. Gordon Haber just completed an extensive thesis on game interaction in Alaska. He says the results show that Fish and Game does not pay enough attention to total systems or animal behavior, and that they've allowed overhunting, which is the main cause of the moose declines. Rausch disagrees.
I noticed that moose populations are down in Mount McKinley where they haven't been hunted ever, and I think there are factors other than just man's use of the species.
Based on my research, my own period I was collecting data in McKinley between 66 and 74, that's just nonsense. There's no way the moose were declining. In fact, I think there was a slight increase.
How do you determine what a harvest quota is for a management area?
In many areas, we actually do counts annually. In other areas, we're taking only bulls. And of course, there are polygamous species, and if you take only bulls, there's very little chance that you'll get into any serious trouble with the population because you're not using one component that is essential, mainly the females.
When there are fewer bulls around, therefore it takes longer for the bulls to fertilize the cows. Some of the cows have their calves so late that these calves go into their first winter at a very pronounced disadvantage. Smaller, not as well developed as other calves. This could well lead to increased mortality of calves. Another factor is that with births in the spring being spread over a longer period, there's less predator saturation. In a normal situation, with all the calves being born at once, the predators, like wolves and grizzly bears, are literally swamped. Now, we don't know for sure what's happening in either one of those cases, but my point is simply that we should be emphasizing those kinds of things more in research and management, whereas now in Alaska in particular, behavior is almost considered to be insignificant in management considerations.
Predators, including man, are the greatest factor in moose kills. Prior to statehood, the federal government maintained a massive wolf control program with aerial hunts and bounties on wolf pelts. That's been stopped now, and wolf populations are strong throughout the state. Recently, Fish and Game has undertaken some controversial wolf control studies to look at moose-wolf relationships. Preliminary results are somewhat surprising. Grizzly bears killed 16 of the 20 marked calves in one area where wolves were present. In today's wildlife-conscious world, it's unlikely that wiping out wolves or grizzly bears to increase moose populations will happen. People are the only predators that can be controlled to any great degree. Alaska's moose are the biggest in existence. Trophy hunters worldwide come to Alaska to hunt, and that activity supports a lot of local employment with taxidermists, air charters, and guides. Don Brand is a booking agent for Jonas Brothers Safaris.
Yeah, it's on 100 yards. It was a little off. Alaska is good and bad. They've got the best guides in the world up here. They also got some of the worst. They have some of the most honest, and they have some of the most dishonest. And we had two of our clients book their own hunts last year in southern Alaska. And they were out 3 days. The first 3 days they were out, they were eating Spam and bread. And after the third day, they realized that they were completely lost and didn't know where they were. And their guide didn't know where they were. Well, they wandered around for over 10 days, and they were suffering from exposure, sometimes hypothermia. And finally, a super cub flew over real low, and they fired a couple of rounds at it and got its attention, and they got to zone, they got them out one by one. But they'd been eating grouse and ptarmigan. They could have died, and if one of them had broke a leg, he would have died.
There are over 400 registered guides in Alaska. They range from the bandit guides who flaunt the law to doctors who register as guides only to be able to write off their airplanes on their income tax, to full-time guides like Clark Engle, a master guide and member of the guide board.
I've never seen this fine a camp anywhere, at least in North America. This is the type of camp that Clark Engle runs is more similar to what we have in Africa. But there's quite a bit of difference in the pay scale for the help in Africa and here. So they don't quite have all the servants you got there.
So do you see guides as being, or guided hunts as posing any kind of a threat to the moose populations in the state?
I don't. Of course, I kind of see it a little bit different than some of the resident hunters would, because I'm in the industry. They're just not a threat to the moose or any other animal as far as they go, caribou or because, you know, if we kill all of our animals, say all of the trophies in an area, especially since we've got this allocation of areas, the guiding areas, we're out of business because we can't move from one area to another anymore.
Guides are now assigned individual areas by law and must restrict their hunting to those areas.
I've come up here a lot of times and just sit down and spotted the animals and took right off on them, no problem. But like I say, other days we sit up here for maybe 2-3 days and not spot anything that's a real trophy, like that caribou we just spotted over there. To some people it might be a trophy, but it's too small, and he's got kind of a funny horn on one side, so he's not a trophy, for at least not for my people.
For $3,000 plus, people in Engle's camp are treated to some of the best hunting in the state. Hunting is never easy, but with a guide to cook, spot, gut, pack, and prepare the trophy, a hunter's life in this camp is quite a bit different than the cold beans and wet tents that many moose hunters experience. The meat, not the trophy, is usually the most important thing for a resident hunter. One moose can supply about 500 pounds of meat, or enough to feed a family of 4 with choice cuts for a winter. Even if they have it processed, it represents a significant savings for a family. The problem is, without moose around, even the resident must fly in or use expensive all-terrain vehicles to get their moose these days.
Is that enough?
Many village people must hunt their own meat. The moose represents an important part of what's called a subsistence lifestyle to many villagers. In areas far from population centers, like Ambler on the Kobuk River, moose are plentiful, more today than anyone can remember. But in villages like Minto, only 1/2 hour's airtime from Fairbanks and right on a road, the moose are devastated.
The people right here in the village haven't got no chance to get a moose. Because we spot moose, somebody already get it, an airplane.
Peter John has lived all his 77 years in the Minto area, and in that time he's shot a lot of moose.
I've been in the brush all my life, and I make my living through the brush, the animal. And what's going to happen another 20 years from now, nobody don't know, unless we really protect what we have right now, not only for the native people, but for the white people and all. Because that's theirs, and then if they want to enjoy sport, fishing and everything, they better just get down to business and try to take care of what they have.
There used to be a lot of fish around here. A lot of fish, a lot of ducks, a lot of game, a lot of moose. Since that road opened up, and it's just hardly nothing now. Any place where you put in the road, it's going to be like it. I think that's the same way with that Haber road there. If they open that up, there ain't going to be no game along that road. Even for some of the, I know for some of the villages, maybe Alaska and someplace like that. You see, I think villages like that, they go out and they subsistence hunting. You know, nobody bothers them. But I think if they open that road there, then it's going to start changing all that for the, like here in Minto, it's going to be like.
Carlos Frank is the defendant in a moose poaching case that he's appealing to the state Supreme Court. The meat was necessary for a funeral potlatch, he says, and that it is his people's religious right to take moose any time for certain specific traditional uses. The decision in this case will be a landmark for subsistence laws in Alaska.
If it came up again today, would you do it again?
If it was out of season, it was in the same situation. I believe I would if it was in exactly the same situation. But I just, you know, like I say, it's been carried on for years and years. When in this situation, they said that, you know, we needed fresh meat. I mean, they say we killed the moose because we needed fresh meat at the potlatch. Well, that don't really have to be, you know, fresh or anything. Well, we just didn't have enough of anything.
The Department of Fish and Game says that rural hunters have a priority to the game, and they've structured the regulations accordingly.
We sometimes open the season late in the fall when the ice is starting to form and airplanes can't land. Seasons late in the winter when most of the recreational hunters aren't interested in hunting, and other similar devices to give preference to those people living in the rural areas.
Moose poaching is one of the few misdemeanors that's almost guaranteed to bring a jail sentence in Alaska.
We got another moose poaching case on 98 miles East Highway. 98 miles.
Enforcement officers can and do seize any item used in a violation, including airplanes. This year alone, there have been 7 planes seized.
They heard shots at 98 miles East Highway and down Fish Creek. Her husband found a carcass of a moose this morning. Every moose poaching, caribou poaching, or any poaching case that we come into, just like a crime investigator would approach a homicide. If we use videotapes in many areas for a good crime scene investigation. I use movie cameras when I'm out in the bush. We photograph the area. We check the area by air. We check all tire prints. We look for spent cartridges. We take fingerprints. We do exactly the same thing as if it was a homicide.
There's thousands of animals in the woods, and thousands of moose in the woods. What makes the moose so important?
You say we have thousands of animals. You look at the lower 48. Once upon a time, they had thousands of buffaloes roaming the plains. Now we have hardly any buffalo roaming the plains. The only place you find them is in Yellowstone Park, and a few other scattered herds throughout the Midwest. If we keep on killing our animals, you say, what difference does one animal make? One animal, 2 animals, everything adds up, and pretty soon it'll be just like the lower 48.
The Division of Fish and Wildlife enforces the law. It's up to the Department of Fish and Game to formulate it. A recent state ombudsman's investigation involving a biologist who spoke out against department policy charges that the department stifles open discussion. Frank Flavin, state ombudsman.
The real issue was basically manipulation of employees so that they would not take on a position different from what the departmental position was.
And is this the case? Did you find this, Ted?
Well, that's what we found in this particular case, yes, that they did take this retaliatory action against the individual because they felt he was taking a position opposite to what the departmental position was.
Do you think that this type of closing off diversity of opinion is a recurrent theme there, or an isolated instance?
I think it's an isolated instance. Although I must admit that we never found as much fear or paranoia on the part of employees as we have in this particular investigation. People were really almost uniformly afraid to talk to us openly for fear of some sort of retaliation, or they just didn't want to get involved because they saw it as some sort of a potentially political problem, this type of thing.
We find the Department of Fish and Game actions to be contrary to law, arbitrary and capricious, unfair, oppressive, and an abuse of discretion. And most of it's pointed at you. What do you think of it?
I think that Frank Flavin is certainly justified in presenting his perception. I think we'll already have a copy of our response, and we find that he erred rather grievously in some ways.
You called it an irresponsible act. What do you mean by that?
I feel that he did not fairly investigate the situation.
Alaska's growing pains have taken their toll on the moose. Wildlife management must keep pace with an exploding human population. Many people feel that they want to see the moose preserved, that they consider the moose an essential element of life in Alaska.